Erratas are a really big part of Yu-Gi-Oh's history. They can help us better understand what a card is meant to do, fix problem-solving card text, or even get cards removed from the ban list. Now, most of the time, erratas can be pretty harmless, like in the case of Necrovalley, but in other cases, it can drastically change what a card is meant to do and honestly, ruin the card forever. How's it going, everyone? My name is Matt, and if this is your first time watching the channel, welcome. I make competitive Yu-Gi-Oh videos with the goal of helping everyone get better at the game. This includes guides on how to beat the best decks in the game, as well as in-depth reviews of different strategies so you know what to do or not to do when using them. So if you like that kind of content, then subscribe to the channel for more. But today I wanted to talk about a few banned cards and how I would fix them to make sure they're still playable and very strong, but not ban worthy. Now obviously we can just slap on a bunch of restrictions onto these cards and call it a day, but I wanted to actually make these cards still quite playable and without losing the actual essence of what made the card so good in the first place. I'm also not going to be taking away any effects. I don't want this to feel like a brand new card, more like a up-to-date, more modern and fair version of it. So with that being said, the first card that I want to fix today is Crystron Halqifibrax. We got Halq back in 2020 after years of the OCG having it first, but as soon as we got it in the TCG, it started causing major problems, leading to pretty much every good generic level 3 or lower tuner monster getting hit on the ban list because of what Halq did to the game. Before Halq was banned in October of 2022, it caused so many degenerate combos to enter the game. And honestly, it really wasn't that fun of a time for pretty much anyone playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Now here's a quick refresher for Halqifibrax. It's a pseudo-generic Link 2 requiring any two monsters including a tuner, and has two really solid effects. The first one was on summon. It could special summon a level 3 or lower tuner from deck or hand to your side of the field. And the second effect was that during your opponent's main phase or battle phase, you could tag out the Halqifibrax to a synchro tuner monster from your extra deck, which could be really good to get more plays going on the opponent's turn and cause extra disruption. It was basically a card that was made to help support synchro strategies once we got all the new changes to Yu-Gi-Oh! When Link monsters got introduced to the game. For those who don't know, when Link monsters first came out, you had to special summon anything from the extra deck to a zone a Link monster points to. Compared to now, it just has to be Link monsters specifically. Even before the update to Master Rule 4, Halq would have been an extremely strong card in pretty much every single deck that wanted to Link climb, and the fact that now the restrictions for synchro monsters were lifted, it became even better. Now there are a few ways you can go about fixing Halqifibrax, but I didn't want to limit what it could actually summon from the deck. So how did I end up fixing it? Well, here's the new Crystron Halqifibrax. It still requires two monsters, but I've changed it so that it now requires a level 3 or lower tuner instead of just any tuner monster. Its new effect reads that if this card is Link summoned, you can special summon one level 3 or lower tuner from your hand or deck to a zone this card points to in defense position. You cannot activate the effects of cards with the same original name as the card summoned by this effect for the rest of the turn, or use monsters with the same original name as Link material for the rest of the turn. During your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can banish this card you control, special summon one tuner synchro monster from your extra deck. This is treated as a synchro summon. You can only use each effect of Crystron Halqifibrax once per turn. So basically I've made 4 changes to Halqifibrax because honestly it's that strong of a card. First off, the requirements for its summon. I now require that Halqifibrax uses a level 3 or lower tuner monster. This isn't a huge change, but it's a change enough to make it so that it can't be splashed in every single deck. The second change is that you have to summon the monster to a zone that Halqifibrax points to. Now while this may not seem like that big of a deal, it does weaken Halq quite a bit. It makes it weaker to cards like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, which remove the Link arrows from the field. It also makes it weak to something like SP Little Knight, especially when going second. Also, based on Halq's original arrows, it forces it to be placed in the extra monster zone, which isn't super uncommon, but it is going to make it a lot more difficult to actually resolve that effect all the time. The third change is on the restrictions of the monster summoned out of the deck. Now, you can't use any effects or use it as Link material for that monster for the entire turn. It basically makes it as a way to get any tuner out of the deck but not abuse its effects or Link climb with it, which I think is pretty valid. And the final change is nowhere near as impactful as the previous two were, but it still does play a role. Basically, on the opponent's turn, only in the main phase you can do the tag out effect as opposed to in the main phase or in the battle phase. It makes it more similar to IP Masquerena in a way, and I think that card is pretty fair that you can only use it during the main phase. But anyways, let me know what you think about this new version of Crystron Halqifibrax down in the comments. But our next banned card we're going to talk about today is Elder Entity Norden. Norden was released back in the 2015 Megatins as a promo card, and the second it was released, its impact was immediate. but it was never actually summoned properly, only through the use of instant fusion, and could then be used as a really powerful extender to create pretty much any generic rank 4. Now in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It wouldn't really be used to enable rank 4s, more so to create really powerful link 2s. The issue is, right now, it's really not that strong of a card in terms of its effect. It requires a good bit of setup, so I do think that the card could come off the list right now, even without a change. But I do think that would be at least a little bit of a mistake, and here's why. Super Polymerization is an amazing card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, but it really is defined by the cards it can actually summon out from the extra deck. Right now the two main ones are Garura and Muddragon of the Swamp. If we include Norden, then any deck that would spit out 2 or more Xyz or Synchro monsters on their turn would have a really hard time dealing with Super Polymerization. So my suggested change is actually to fix how we summon out Norden. I came up with 2 different changes for Norden that would affect how it's summoned to the field, and I think would make it a lot more fair and definitely a viable card to return on the ban list. But I had a really hard time actually deciding which one I felt was the best option, so I want to hear what your thoughts are down in the comments. Our first option is that instead of requiring 1 Synchro or Xyz plus another Synchro or Xyz, it would require 1 Synchro or Xyz you control plus 1 Synchro or Xyz you control. So basically, it can still be summoned out pretty easily, including with cards like Instant Fusion, but it can't be used to abuse Super Polymerization, which I think is a pretty fair compromise. But my second change is arguably a little bit better. In this case over here, it requires 1 Synchro or Xyz monster plus 1 Synchro or Xyz monster, and it must be special summoned from your extra deck by banishing the above cards you control. This means you can't summon it out with Super Polymerization, and you have to banish the resources that you would use to be able to use it. So basically you end up going neutral in card advantage because you lose the 2 monsters on the field to gain 1, and then you revive back another monster with Norden. While both changes to Norden are really unique in how they actually affect what the card does, they don't change the actual essence of Norden at all, which I do really like. But my personal preference, I think for the time being, is going to be option number 1, where it requires only monsters you control. But like I said, let me know down in the comments which option of these 2 you prefer. But moving on to our next card, it's going to be the most infamous card in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Maxx C. Maxx C is arguably the best card in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! But how would I fix it? Well, honestly, it would take quite a lot to make Maxx C a fair and balanced Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, but I think I found a pretty good alternative to make it still playable, just not absolutely broken like it is right now. The current text for Maxx C reads that during either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and this turn, each time your opponent special summons a monster, immediately draw 1 card. And you can only use 1 Maxx C per turn. And here are my changes. During your opponent's main phase 1, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. This turn, each time your opponent special summons a monster by a card effect, immediately draw 1 card. You can only use 1 Maxx C per turn. This may not seem like much, but it's actually a pretty significant change. The fact that it can only be used during the main phase 1 means that opponents can't just shotgun it in the draw phase to start playing around certain cards. It also means that it now plays into triple tactic talents all the time, but it also means that any card effect that would special summon in the standby phase or in the draw phase won't trigger Maxx C to draw them a card, which I think is a pretty good compromise. But the real change is that the draw only happens when a monster is special summoned by a card effect, which means if a monster is special summoned by like a Link summon or a Synchro summon or whatever the case might be, it won't actually trigger Maxx C to draw a card. This updated version of Maxx C is still going to be very good, especially depending on the format that we're in, and I could definitely see it seeing play in the main deck, but it won't be anywhere near as good as it is today. And it also will be very format reliant, where sometimes it will see main deck play, but other times it'll be relegated to the side deck at best. And either way, I don't think that Maxx C comes off the ban list in the TCG without a change anytime soon. From a broken level 2 insect monster, we move to a broken level 1 insect monster in Level Eater. This card is absolutely insane, and when links were first revealed, the card really shot up in playability, being a way to constantly generate free link material over and over in a single turn. But that being said, it's pretty easy to fix Level Eater. There's like 5 or 6 different things you can do to make sure that Level Eater will still be good, but not abused. You could just slap a hard once per turn on it, you can make it so that the card can't be used as link material, and so on. But this is one of the more creative changes I could find. If this card is in your graveyard and you control no link monsters, you can banish 1 card from your hand, then target 1 level 5 or higher monster you control. Reduce its level by 1, and if you do, special summon this card. This face-up card on the field cannot be tributed except for a tribute summon. Now you might think that this kills the card completely, and honestly it's not really the case. you can still use Level Eater for so many different things, whether it's going to be for a synchro summon or it's going to be for random Maxx or whatever the case might be. It just can't be used effectively enough as link climbing material. Now you can still link off with it at least one time, which is still going to be very powerful, but the reason why I actually added in the whole restrictions with banishing a card in your hand to use the effect is because I didn't want it to be abused for other reasons. There are so many ways you can just send this card to the graveyard to activate other cards or effects, and I didn't want that to keep happening before you decide to commit to a link summon. Even with the restriction of not having a link monster on the field, Level Eater is still an incredibly powerful card, so adding that extra little tiny restriction of banishing a card in your hand didn't seem like too much in my opinion. The next card I'm going to fix is the newest banned Xyz monster, Kashtira Arise-Heart, which warped the game around it for so many different months because of its powerful macrocosmo effect. The original Kashtira Arise-Heart basically had 3 effects. The first one is that any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. The second is that once per chain, each time a card is banished, you can attach one banished card to this card as material. And the final effect is that once per turn, as a quick effect, you can detach 3 materials from this card and then target one card on the field and banish it face down. All 3 of these effects are incredibly powerful, and there's a reason why Kashtira Arise-Heart was the best boss monster in the game for a period of time. But I'd only make 2 changes to Kashtira Arise-Heart. It would still make the card very good, just a lot more manageable. Firstly, I would change the macrocosmos effects to the following. While this card has 3 or more Xyz material, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. And secondly, I decided to adjust the second effect. Now I considered making it a once per turn, but I kind of felt like I was ruining the spirit of the card. So this is what I came up with instead. Once per chain, if a card is banished, attach one banished card to this card as material, max 4. By capping the amount of materials that Arise-Heart would have, it would drastically change how the card is played and the consistency of being able to turn on the macrocosmos effect. Since Arise-Heart can no longer have more than 4 Xyz material and it needs at least 3 material to have the macrocosmos effect, it makes the decision on when to use its target banish effect a lot more difficult. You can use it anytime you want to if you have those 4 materials, but then once you do get the banish, you add another one back with its first mandatory effect, and then you can't use the macrocosmos effect that turn until another card is banished. Like I said, it's still a very good card, just a lot more manageable to handle, and now a card like Xyz Encore just easily shuts it down. Do you think that my changes to Kashtira Arise-Heart are good enough to make the card unbanned? Let me know down in the comments. But our final card today is a card that has never actually seen any competitive success ever, and for that reason it's one of the most notorious banned cards in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. The Tyrant Neptune is a level 10 monster that was banned in 2017 because of its ability to copy any monster effect in the graveyard without any real restriction. The main combo that would have been abused before this card was banned was going to be by resolving the effect of instant fusion to summon a copy of Leerlusk Independent Nightingale, which you would then tribute over with the Tyrant Neptune, copying its effects, making so that the card is now 6,000 attack, could deal 5,000 in burn damage every turn, and was unaffected by any other card's effects. And the copying effect was permanent, so the only real way to out the Tyrant Neptune in this case was with like a kaiju or something. So how do we fix this card without making it absolutely awful? Well, the secret lies in the fact that the effect right now is permanent. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that effect last until the end of the turn. But even then, if you summon this card out going second, you can inflict 5,000 in burn damage and attack for 6,000, doing 11,000 damage, meaning it's pretty likely going to be GG's. So what we're going to do as well is make it so that the turn this card is summoned, your opponent does not take any effect damage until the end phase. This means the Tyrant Neptune can't really be used in a burn deck, but it also can be still really good in a lot of other situations to copy powerful effects. But the fact that it copies both the name and effect of the monster means you can't activate hard once per turn effects multiple times in the same turn with this card, so I do think it's still pretty fair. But let me know what you think about this new version of the Tyrant Neptune and all the other monsters I've covered today down in the comments. Did I fix them while still making them playable, or did I fail miserably? If you like this style of video or you want to see a part 2, let me know by leaving a like on the video and by commenting down below. And did you know that only 20% of my viewers are subscribed to the channel? So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Shout out to my channel members, your support is greatly appreciated and it really helps the channel grow. Thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.